Morning, guys. Good morning, good morning. I'm here all the time. 24 hours a day. Who's playing? Really? I'll have to get service over quick. No, actually, it's on Central Time. So I'll watch it first. In the Malkin. It's with Nina. That service I do with Nina every year. I'll give it to you. It's something that works. Good morning, Art. Are you working this, Yonta? No. I should put you to work. My God. You could pull out a sermon, I would say, out of your head, but
He gets an email last week because people are having their 72nd wedding anniversary. And his father married them, and what they want to know if he would come to.
So you say you'd go as long as their parents will pay you, you know. 73 years, same couple. I know guys that are married that long to 5 different women. I mean, you know, that's amazing. And your dad married them. You sure you don't want to work? I'll put you to work, Yontif. Come on. I'm jealous, I have to tell you. Pull out a sermon from 66 or 72 or 52. I mean, you could give it. I want to see him. I need this stuff. Good God. I didn't make enough because I didn't know how many people would come. I figured with Yontif you'd all stay home. Good morning. Good morning. Let me just, once in raw, fix this thing and then it'll be done. Hey, good morning. How do you like that? Your daughter was here the other day. She's on her way to England. Where's she going? Oh, gosh, what an experience. What a marvelous experience. Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. Good Shabbos. Hey, David. How you doing? Shana Tova. Happy, healthy, sweet, good New Year. All right. Yes, I was in the paper. I spent an hour on the telephone with a lovely lady. She belongs to B'nai David, Judea. She takes this long statement from me. She says, yeah, it's pretty much what all the other rabbis said. I said, then why are you calling me? She says, well, I wanted to see if you had anything else. We had a nice talk. She's very nice. She's very, very...
I think that one thing that you said about God said that we should not wait for the hungry.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a story on the front page of this morning's LA Times about rabbis have trouble figuring out what to talk about this holiday. That's a headline. Right next to, dog bites man, So she's a wonderful writer and a very good interview. She interviewed a bunch of rabbis and she asked all of us, are you talking politics? Are you not talking? Should you talk politics? And, they line up pretty much as you can imagine. You've read all these opinions. But one of the things she said to me is she said, that one of the rabbis, one of the more religious Orthodox guys said to her, the reason I don't talk politics is because everything is in God's hands. Stop that. Everything is in God's hands. It's all God's doing. So all we can do is pray. And I said, well, I opened the Bible. I opened the Haftorah for Yom Kippur. And the Haftorah for Yom Kippur, Isaiah says to the people of Jerusalem, don't pray, bring the hungry into your home and feed them and help the helpless and feed and clothe the naked. And I said, that's my theology. I think we do have a responsibility to shape the society we live in. That's the theology that I was taught. So I think that sometimes it's important for communities to talk about contemporary issues. And, I don't usually talk politics. I haven't done it I did it 1 year, last year. And I'm not saying anything else about the front page of the LA Times. I'm not going to. Look, what I really appreciate were people who objected to it came to talk to me. And I had some wonderful conversations with people. Very, very deep and real and personal conversations where people expressed their exasperation and their anguish and their rage. But we did it, as face to face. It's the people who send bombs on the internet, but it's people who come to you and say, look, I want to tell you why I think you're wrong or why I think, And I appreciate that. We had very, very, I thought, very constructive conversations. Very real. We heard each other, I think, which is what this is really about. A congregation, a community is about listening and about sharing ideas. So I appreciated those people very, very much. Come in. And so this year I'm going to talk about anti-Semitism. I think I'm against it. I'll tell you, I haven't finished the talk yet. So when I get to the end, I'll let you know. Rabbi Farkas is going to talk about the Jewish invention of the future. A very wonderful sermon. Rabbi Hoffman is talking about how we cope with rapid social change, what it's doing to our children, and what we can do to help them. And those are the sermons that I know about, that I've read so far. So I hope they'll be good. I hope you'll enjoy this. It's an interesting shul. They listen to the sermons. Can you imagine that? It's amazing. So please come. So really quickly, it's the Shabbos before Yom Tov. Sunday night, the holiday begins. If you have not gotten tickets, they should have come in the mail. If they did not come in the mail, call the synagogue or come by tomorrow morning. The office will be open tomorrow morning, and you can pick up tickets or we'll give you some new ones. They have to have your name on them. There's a desk out there if they're out here. Yeah. So you need tickets to get into the synagogue, and it's not because it's not for the money, frankly. It's all about security. Part of the anti-Semitism talk is that big tent in the parking lot. That's where the metal detectors are going to be. Right? We're all going to have to walk through metal detectors, including me. They told me I have to have a ticket too with my name on it and an ID. No, seriously. They say this is everybody. We need to know. There's a computer, and they need to know who's in the building. Because if, God forbid, there were an emergency, they need to know who's in the building at any one time. There are 10,000 people in this building.
What if you leave?
What?
What if someone leaves?
What if somebody leaves?
Yeah.
Then we're calling the police and bringing you back. You haven't finished Musaf, Barlam. Get your ass back here. Right? Right? No, this is how this works. So please get tickets. If you're not a member of VBS and you'd like to be here to pray with us and learn with us, we'd be delighted to have you. Call the office in the morning. It's not too late. There's seats in all the services. Yeah?
In truth, Shabbos is more important than Rosh Hashanah.
Shut up. What, you trying to get me fired? What is it? In truth, I could have made a bop get home. Who needed you? What are you trying to give me a hard time for here? Come on, for God's sakes. Please, if you're a member of another shul, make sure that your tickets are arranged for that shul. And I wish you a really, really wonderful Yom Tov. If you're not a member any place and you want to come, we'd love to have you. Just come tomorrow morning and talk to the office. They'll make this possible, right? If you made a huge killing on the stock market, we'll relieve you of the sin of your wealth. If you're having trouble this year, and as all of us do occasionally, we don't want anybody to be blocked from coming to pray with us. So please come. We want to make sure. But you got to come and get a ticket. That's all I'm asking you. Please don't just show up at the gate and say, Rabbi Feinstein's my friend. They're not allowed to let you in. It really is that kind of. The police are going to be here to help us with this because they're really afraid of who shows up, right? So please get a ticket. Come and join us. There'll be metal detectors. So be careful what you bring. Don't bring big bags full of stuff because they'll have to go through them. And it's going to take longer to get in. So please be patient and kind to the people doing this. And then come in and pray with us and learn with us and know that you're safe. Okay? Holiday begins Sunday night. There's 2 services Sunday night. The early service is 6 o'clock in the sanctuary. Is a traditional Erev Yom Tov service with the choir and the cantor. The late service is a service that my wife Nina and I invented some years ago. It was actually a complete accident. It turned out that because of the schedule, we needed a service and didn't have a cantor, so Nina volunteered to do it, and it's turned into a nice thing. We've been doing it now for 10 years. She puts a lot of new music, some beautiful new music. Sorry?
What service? I never.
Erev Yom Tov, 7:30, Malcolm Burdorf Hall. It's Yeah, you can get in with any ticket. You can get into any service with any ticket. Once you're in the building, go find a seat and sit on it. If a Jew comes and says, you're sitting in my seat, ask him to sit on your lap. I mean, any ticket gets you in the building, and you can sit in any open seat. Okay, Erev Yontif, it's open seating. So, but even so. So 7:30, we do a beautiful little musical service. I'm not giving the sermon. I'm just going to tell a story and just create a little atmosphere for Yontif. It's sweet. It's short. You'll be home by the fourth quarter. It'll be... the holiday begins in earnest on Monday morning, early morning. We do Sukkitim or Shachris, and then the choir comes around during the Torah service. You either have early morning service or late service, but again, any ticket gets you in the building, okay? There are, how many services? 6 services. Sanctuary and Malcolm Burdorf, family service for your little kids, family service for older kids, playground minyan, and Sephardic minyan. How many is that? 6, yeah. 6 services at one time. So you have a wonderful opportunity to wander around the building and enjoy different modes of prayer and learning together. And then in the afternoon, there's a service in the sanctuary, not in Malcolm Burdorf. And you're welcome to come and enjoy them for that. On Tuesday, just the morning. We're not going to do an afternoon service on Tuesday. So come in the morning and join us. And then at 4 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon, we'll do Tashlich, my favorite part of the holiday. It's at Lake Balboa, which is just up here on Balboa between Burbank and Victory. Okay? It's that beautiful sort of artificial lake. And we all meet at the edge of the lake, and we'll do a little Tashlich ceremony. You throw your bread into the water and begin the new year. And because everyone started bringing their dogs, we have a special ceremony called Tashlish. Okay? So bring your dog, and we'll do a bark mitzvah for all the dogs. We do a special bracha for the dogs, right? And wish them canine ohara, so. Thank you very much. I'm appearing here Monday night. Monday night I'm in Providence. Tuesday, yes, please.
If someone isn't using the ticket that you got for them, can you change the name?
I don't think you can. I think they frown on that sort of thing. Because they're trying to figure out who's here. That's what they're kind of worried about. I mean, we have no credible threat that there's a threat to the synagogue. We have no intelligence there's a threat to the synagogue. But, yeah, you need ID. Yeah. Just show them who you are, that's all. But we're just trying to be careful. They're just trying to be very, very careful this year, okay? And you can understand why. It's that kind of a year. Yes, please.
Rabbi, I think you said if you don't have a ticket or you need some help, come tomorrow morning.
Come tomorrow morning to the office.
Sunday?
Sunday, it's open. Because it's the last chance. So Janet will be here working on the Sephardic service, and Susie and Natasha will be here working on the main services, all the other services. You can come in, and we're glad to arrange so you're here. We don't want anyone left out. We don't want anyone left out. If you don't have any money, you really can't afford it, we're not going to check your tax returns. Just come on in. We'll figure this out. Okay? Yes?
If there is a ticket you want to assign to somebody else, you can see Susan Rubin, and she'll give you a pass to that person's.
All right, there you go. If you want to share your ticket with somebody else, come into the office tomorrow morning and talk to Susie, and she will give you a special pass that you can pass on to your... Please don't scalp them, okay? First service on the aisle, It's just... And then all the sermons will be up online after the holiday, so if you fall asleep in the middle and want to see what you missed, it'll be right there and you can enjoy it. Okay, any other questions about this stuff? Quickly, so Yontif is Monday and Tuesday, Tashlich Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock. The rest of the week, the synagogue is open, but we're sort of on holiday schedule. Friday night, we'll have minyan, of course. Shabbos morning, next Shabbos morning is Shabbos Shuvah. This is the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. As has become our tradition, our guest will be my dear friend, Rabbi Mark Borowitz from Beit Tshuva. So Mark will join us here for Torah study in the morning, talk to us about the Jewish philosophy of Tshuva. And then during service, he and I will have a few words together, and that'll be next Shabbos morning. And then Yom Kippur begins Tuesday evening at sundown. Okay? That's going to be the only time that the security is going to be difficult, because everyone shows up at the same time. It's the only time of the year Jews actually show up on time. It's a really weird thing. So please come a little early. In the packet with the times of everything, of the services and stuff, there is a little coupon. You can use Lyft for a $5 coupon. So if you live anywhere near here or anywhere, and want to avoid the trouble of having to park and not want to block my driveway and knock over my trash cans, please call Lyft or Uber, and they'll take you right to the front door. In fact, the Uber driver will come in and sit with you during shul. Yes.
Need a ticket.
Tell me about the learning the Wednesday after work is done?
Is it lunch and learn this week? Is it? Yeah, there'll be lunch and learn this week, right? Yeah, both. No? Did I cancel it? Did I cancel it? I don't know. Mel says I canceled it, so I'll ask Janet. I think I canceled it because it's the day after Yontif. Yeah? All right, good. All right, so we'll skip this one. Is that okay? So no lunch and learn. If you have lunch, come eat, but I'm not going to learn. Lunch and watch the rabbi try to write his Yom Kippur talk. Okay, if you happen to have a chumash, we're going to use the sheet and the chumash today, but if you happen to have the chumash, just open to page 1165. We're at Parshat Nitzavim, the end of the Torah. It's funny, isn't it, that the Torah ends just when the year ends? And so we've come to the end of the story. Moses has accomplished his mission. He's brought his people across the desert, brought them to the boundaries of Eretz Canaan. I'm just going to read it. Brian, you don't have to schlep. There's some over here. Come get it. He's brought his people to the boundaries of Eretz Canaan, brought them to the boundaries of the Promised Land. And he's finished his life mission. And he spent the last 2 years reciting to them this book, the book of Deuteronomy. He told them, because these are not the people he brought out of Egypt, these are the children. He told them how they got here and what were the crises of their parents' generation that shaped them as a community. And he talked to them about what the challenges are going in. We had these Torah portions these last couple of weeks. Ki tavo el haaretz, when you get to the land, when you settle the land, this is what you need to remember. These are the dangers, the pitfalls. You talk ki tetzei lemilchama, when you're going out to war, you're about to conquer a land. Here are the rules that will protect you from becoming a monster in the course of your conquest. He showed them how to set up a justice system, how to set up a civil society with judges and magistrates and officers of a community. I mean, you try to, for just a moment, what the Torah is grasping here is the enormous change that is about to happen to this community. These are desert people. They're living a Bedouin nomadic life. They're about to enter a land where they're going to settle into towns and villages. They're not going to live in tents. They're going to live in homes. They're not going to be wandering from place to place. They're going to be setting down social roots. They're going to be living in a place, generation after generation, in the same place. Even the topography changes. You're not living in the desert. You're going to be living in a green, or if you live in the north, you're going to live in a green, fertile, verdant, moist area, flowing of milk and honey. In the south, it's not quite as wet, but it's not desert. It's a different topography. It looks different. It feels different. You will be a different person. And one of the principal challenges of this enormous transition is that in the desert you have no neighbors. In the desert you're isolated. You're alone. So what all the conversations are in the family, and there's no one to challenge your cultural assumptions. But once you enter the land, you're going to be living among other peoples who have very different views of the world, very different gods, different values, different ways of understanding, different cultural patterns. And those patterns are going to be enticing to you. They're going to be inviting. And the question, and you're going to want to begin to assimilate. Even if you don't want to, you're going to begin to assimilate. You're going to assimilate into that cultural pattern. It's going to happen. What can you assimilate and what shouldn't you assimilate? What is fruitful for your culture and what is a betrayal of your culture? What can you digest and what's going to give you social, cultural indigestion? You see? The transition is mind-blowing. And Moses knows it, so he's trying so hard to fill them with enough wisdom that they can make this transition without completely losing their identity. That's the ostensible story that we're reading here. Everybody got that? Yes. Now let's take it another level for a minute. I pointed out to you many, many weeks ago when we started this that the book of Deuteronomy was probably written in the 7th century because it was discovered in the remodel of the temple during Josiah's revolution. So that the book was actually written during a time of a different kind of transition. Also a huge transition, also a tremendous change in the way the world is, but a different transition. The transition of the milieu in which the book was written was the transition from a small kingdom to the age of empire. We were a small kingdom. Small, not very populous, not very prosperous. But God, in God's infinite wisdom, happened to put us on the highway, the great civilized highway of the ancient world between Mesopotamia and Egypt, which makes us tremendously vulnerable. And the highway runs between the two great empires of the East, Mesopotamia and Egypt. The only reason that we could rise as a kingdom under David and Solomon is that those two great empires were in quiescence. They weren't doing very much. And David and Solomon could carve out for themselves a pretty good political and mercantile presence. But once you get to the 7th century, to the 600 BCEs, Mesopotamia is rising and Egypt is rising. And suddenly our political landscape has changed remarkably. We are now a small player in a big league game. And how do you negotiate that? And what happens to our small culture, our small, unique, special culture in a world of great imperial cultures? In a world of great imperial, how are we going to maintain a sense of who we are? So in many ways, the transition this is also a transition. And the writers of Deuteronomy, who are related to the biblical prophets, are very aware of this and are trying to prepare their people for what they're about to go through also. So you talk about what it means to prepare and to sustain a populace and a cultural community as they're watching their world change rapidly. How do you do that? That's what this book is all about. A very contemporary kind of idea, right? It's a very contemporary idea. If you ever had this sense as you're walking the streets, you're talking to your family, or just that the world is moving too quickly, and I can't quite figure out what to do and how to do it and how to negotiate this world, that's what this book is all about. This is a book about how do you live in a world that's kind of strange. Yesterday was my world, but today it feels awfully strange, and I'm really worried about tomorrow. I'm really worried about tomorrow because I can't see tomorrow clearly. And that kind of anxiety, I can't see tomorrow clearly, that's what this book is all about. I was talking to a young friend who asked me about, he says, has it ever been like this before? Has it ever been so just this craziness, this feeling of unsettledness? I said, yeah, when I was a kid, 1968, 1968, 1969 was a weird time. It's a weird, they're playing all these wonderful Woodstock retrospectives on TV. And I'm of that generation. I was a kid, but I was of that generation. I had long hair and funny clothes, and my dad would go, it was crazy. So it wasn't just the politics. I mean, that was part of it. There was a sense of the culture getting unbolted from its foundations. Things were just changing rapidly, And that same sense of unsettled transition is what's at the heart of this book. So it begins with a retrospective, Moses telling his people, here's how we got here. It gives then a core of law and rulings, always on the theme of don't lose faith with God. Don't become the people of the land. And then it's going to end with one of the great sermons. If you want to know the truth, Rob Silverman is here. He's one of the great preachers. I'll embarrass him, but the truth is, I've heard him speak many, many, many times. One of the great, great preachers and teachers. But I have to say, with due respect, here's the greatest Rosh Hashanah sermon ever written. It's Deuteronomy. It's between 29 and 30. So we're on page 1165. right? Nitzavim. Nitzavim means standing up. And here Moshe looks at his people. And I just want you to imagine, this is an old man. And an old man who this is his last breath. This is the last of his strength. This is the last of his energy. And he's just saying to his kinderlach, to his great-grandchildren, like, just please listen to me one last time. And here it is. And this is to us, because we finished this year, right? 5779 is gone. And we're going to begin 5780. I know you're all looking forward to that. I keep dating my checks, 5779, for the next few months. You stand this day, all of you. Atem nitzavim hayom. Hayom. You're going to hear that word in the liturgy. Hayom ta'amtsenu. Hayom tivarchenu. Hayom, hayom, hayom. Hayom, hayom, hayom. It's hayom. Today's the day. Here you are. And the commentaries pick that up because they say, this is one of those words that is written in red in the Torah. It's not really written in red. The commentaries say that. It like jumps off the page because he's not talking to his generation. He's talking to every generation. Atem nitzavim hayom. Lifnei Adonai Elohechem. You're all standing in front of God. Now just gather that in a minute. In ancient civilizations, in ancient Babylonia, which is where we stole Rosh Hashanah from, the king would rise and the priest would climb up to the top of the ziggurat, top of the magic mountain, the man-made mountain. And it would be the king who would stand in front of God. And the rest of us, we stood at the bottom of the mountain looking up at the king. And Moshe says, no, you stand in front of God. You matter to God. You're important. Your choices, this is Rosh Hashanah, right? You matter. You're all here in front of God, right? Rashechem, Shiftechem, Ziknechem, Shotrechem, all of you guys, the big ones and the small ones, right? Your leaders, your elders, your children. Everybody's here, right? Your children, your wives, your stranger within your camp, the wood chopper to the water drawer. Wood chopper was a good middle-class living. Now, wait a minute, you're going to say, wood chopper, we're in the Sinai desert. Yeah, not exactly. They sort of lost the scene here. It's like one of those movies where Ben-Hur's wearing a watch, There are no wood choppers in the desert because there's no wood in the desert to chop. All right, fine. But the idea you get to the water carrying was the schleppiest job you could have. Anybody, the lowest to the lowest to the highest, right? To enter into a covenant with God, which God is concluding this day with its sanctions, to the end that he may establish liman, to the end. Liman, for the sake of what? For what purpose? It's what my teacher, Rav Showeiss, used to call teleology. What's it for? For what? Liman, for what? That he may establish with you this day as his people to be your God, as he promised and he swore to your ancestors. I make this covenant not with you alone, but with those who are standing here this day before God and those who are not standing here this day. Like all the generations to come. This is the covenant. And then he goes through the whole story. He goes through, he says, we dwelt in the land of Egypt, and he's going to just repeat it all now, right? And don't give in to the ways of the people of the land you're entering, because that's going to poison your heart. And he's so aware of the temptations of assimilation, which is going to be the Jewish story for the rest of history, right? How much what do we take and what don't we take? How do you assimilate the best of civilization and how do you let the rest behind? And again, if you'll switch channels with me, read it on both levels. If you're the prophet living in the time of Josiah, and you say to yourself, empire is coming, and we will be swallowed up, if not by this empire, then by the next one. And we will have to live as a tiny minority within much larger cultural groups. How do we not lose our identity? This is going to be the great question. The great question. It's not just a question for American Judaism. It's the great question in all generations. Please, let me just tell you one little, and I'm going to insult all of you, but that's just fine. Everyone, if you ask Jews, tell me about your great-grandparents. Oh, my great-grandparents were very pious, Orthodox rabbis. Even your grandmother? Yes, she had a beard down to here. Everyone's great-grandparents were very pious, very traditional. And I say, and you? Oh, I'm not nearly as religious. And my kids? Oh, forget it. They're Let me tell you a secret. Your ancestors were not so pious. Listen, they've been pious. They stayed in Europe. They've been pious. They'd have stayed in Iran. They've been pious. They would have stayed in Morocco. They've been pious. They would have stayed in Canada. You know, they were on the move because they were pious, yeah, but they were also aware. And the really pious ones stayed back because this was a wasteland. Our ancestors, just like us, had to make an accommodation with the world in which they lived. And those accommodations were both superficial and deep. Superficial. They dressed like them. I mean, you see a Chabad, one of my Chabad brothers, right? And you see the long black coat and the big beard and the fuzzy hat. Moses didn't wear a fuzzy hat. This is 16th, 17th century Polish aristocracy. Right? This is, if I wear Hawaiian, I'm going to start a group of Hasidim, Hawaiian shirt Hasidim. Right? My Hasidim are going to wear Hawaiian shirts. You'll see them at the mall putting people in tefillin, and you'll know that they're Feinstein Hasidim. From the Encina Rebbe, you know? Right? Not Lubavitch? No, we're Encino. How do you know? Well, we wear a Hawaiian shirt. Why do you wear a Hawaiian shirt? Because our Rebbe, the great Feinstein, he wears a Hawaiian shirt. Oh. Actually, they'll say, no, we'll do it the Hawaiian because Moses wore Hawaiian shirts, right? That's superficial, but the deep stuff is we assimilated patterns of thinking from the world in which we lived. We always did. This is the question. All right, chapter 30, page 1169. Here's the greatest Rosh Hashanah sermon ever given. Then we'll do some Talmud. Ready? Right? And he tells them, if you mess up, if you do adopt the ways of the people that you're displacing, if you do adopt the ways of the people among whom you live, you're going to lose the land. But here's my promise to you. Ready? When all these things befall you, the blessing and the curse I've set before you, and you take them to heart amidst the nations in which the Lord your God has banished you, and you return to the Lord your God. Vishavta, it's singular, it's not plural. Vishavta ad Adonai Elohecha. Shavta is the word for tshuva. This is tshuva. There's a reason why this Torah portion is read today. What will happen? What will happen when you turn back toward God? When you turn your heart back toward God? Right? And you and your children heed his commandment with all your heart and soul as I enjoin you this day. The Lord will restore your fortunes and take you back in love. You hear that? V'shav Adonai elech. God will, if you will turn to God, God will turn to you. Right? Et shvutcha v'rechamcha v'shav. It's a beautiful thing. God will bring you home in love. You turn to God, God turns back to you. There is no, this relationship can't be broken. This is love. This isn't the sort, you can't do anything that so alienates you from God that God would not be ready to take you back if you're willing to do pure tshuva, real tshuva. This is a remarkable idea. This relationship is that strong. Even if your outcasts are at the ends of the world, it says. And think of that morally, not just as physically. From there the Lord will gather you and fetch you, and the Lord will bring you to the land that your fathers possessed, and you'll possess it, and he'll make you more prosperous and numerous than before. Okay? Now, go to the bottom, page 1170. Here's because we're going to read a piece of Torah, and this is the punchline of that piece of Torah. Surely, not surely, surely. Where's surely? This is for surely. This is for sure. It says ki. Ha-mitzvah hazot. Mitzvah usually means commandment, but here it means the whole bit, the whole thing I've told you. Instruction, this truth, which I give you today, which I've instructed you today. It's not too baffling for you. It's niflate. It's not beyond you. Nor is it beyond reach. It's not in the heaven that you should say, who among us can go up to the heaven and get it for us and impart it to us that we may observe it? Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who among us can cross to the other side of the sea and get it for us and impart it to us that we may observe it? No, it's very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart to do it, to observe it. What's he saying? Don't think that this is a faith only for the religious virtuoso. This is not just for, you don't have to be like, people always say, I have lunch with a guy and he orders something and he looks at me and says, oh, I shouldn't have that if you're here. I said, you can have anything you want. He says, well, I'm not kosher. I said, well, never mind that. But, he said, but I'm not a rabbi, so I don't have to be kosher. I said, okay, eat whatever you want. This isn't for rabbis. This isn't for saints. This is not a religious moral code for saints. This is for everybody. And it's not beyond you. It's not like it's so arcane and magical and secret and esoteric that you need to go into heaven and go find it, or to go to the other side of the world and get it. As a matter of fact, says Moses, you didn't need me. The only reason you wanted me is because you were scared to hear the voice yourself. But God wanted to tell you. But now that I've told it to you, where is it? Where does this live? It lives in you. So if you want to hear the voice of God, where do you go to hear it? In you. It's in you. You have this. Now, doing it's different. Doing it is making a choice, making a life out of this. But learning it, you know it. It's in you. This idea that it's in you, it's not too hard. It's not in heaven. It's not beyond you. It's in you. Right? I've finished my biography of Rabbi Schulweis. And this is the epigraph. This is on that first page when you have a saying that summarizes the whole book. This is his favorite verse of the Bible. It's in you. Yes, Michael.
2 weeks ago, I pointed this out. This was an incredibly revolutionary statement.
Yeah.
Because it's like, in a manner, it could be the mantra for Reconstructionist Judaism.
Not Reconstructionist Judaism. It's in the Torah.
It's in the Torah.
It's our Torah.
It's our Torah.
Even the Orthodox read this.
Right, but they don't, I don't think they pay much attention to it.
No, of course they do. It's powerful. It's a very powerful idea. It's in you. Think about that a minute, right? And now he gives you the bottom line. So here's Rosh Hashanah in a nutshell. I set before you this day life and prosperity, death and adversity. Right? And then he gives you this is the commentary. Because I commanded you to love God, but if your heart turns away, right? All of these terrible things are going to happen to you, right? Then turn to page 1172. And now he comes back to that theme in verse 19. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. Now that's an interesting phrase. I not witness against you this day, but I want heaven and earth heaven and earth are called upon by the prophets frequently to be the witnesses to an agreement. You know how at a chuppah, at a wedding, you have two witnesses come and sign the ketubah, right? So this is a ketubah between Israel and God. And heaven and earth are the two witnesses. Now what are they witnessing? What are they witnessing? That I have done what I came to do. I have fulfilled my life mission. I have set before you, right? I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. I have not compelled you to choose anything. I'm not compelling you. This is not under duress. I'm just telling you. I'm giving you the great choice you have to make in life. Choose life. Right? Choose life. If you and your offspring, by loving the Lord your God and heeding his commands and holding fast to him, then you'll have the life and long endure on the soil that God promised to give to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give to them. If I were writing the Torah, the credits would roll, the music would rise. That's the end of the movie. Because that's the whole thing. You have to make a choice in life. That's what he's trying to tell you. And I've given you what the terms are, and I've told you what the consequences are, and I've pointed this out to you, and I'm just begging you to make the right choice. I'm just begging you to make the right choice. So whatever choice you make, you're responsible for. And you have to suffer the consequences or accept the consequences of whatever happens to you because you had a choice. But if you ever decide to turn back and to change, you also have that power. You are not stuck. Human nature is not fixed. It's not fixed. Yes, we all are born with constitutional tendencies. Some of us are kind, and some of us are cruel, and some of us are funny, and some of us are dour, and some of us are generous, and some of us are stingy. And yes, but you choose who you want to become. That's the whole, and you are therefore responsible. That the self you build is the accumulation of the choices you make, and you live with the consequences of those choices, and you can always go back and redo and undo character traits and enforce different ones. Now, how do you do that? That's why I gave you the Talmud. So everybody take this page. Now you can close the Talmud, the Bible. I know, I see him. It's really hard to miss him. He's a big guy. You know? Thank you. Yes, Douglas.
Moshe Rabbeinu, our greatest teacher,
Yeah,
is advocating a Torah of personal responsibility.
I think so.
He's a libertarian.
I hardly think that because there's 613 laws in this book. So I hardly think that a guy who tells you what you can eat and what you can't eat is a libertarian.
If his Torah is based on personal responsibility, it's within you, right?
Yes, but you also have to live with because you have to live with the consequences of obeying or disobeying God's law.
Isn't that what a libertarian would say? You have to live with the
I think if that-
consequences of your choices?
Yes, but there's a society. Oh, go ahead.
Can I add that I think it also has to do with not just personal responsibility, but actually collective
And it's
responsibility.
collective responsibility for each
So
other.
So it's not.
Give them the
it's not
microphone.
a libertarian, thought process. It's actually a collectivist
Yeah.
thought process. The whole religion is very, very much a collectivist religion.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a morning. This is great. We're going to have a morning. We're going to have 4 or 5 people. One's going to say, Moses is a Republican. And someone else is going to say, Moses is a Democrat. And someone else is going to prove Moses is a libertarian. And someone else is going to say Moses is a communitarian. Moses is a democratic socialist. Right? And then at the end, we're going to vote. Okay, how's that? Is that okay? No, seriously, I think this is a great morning. We're going to have to do that one morning. We'll do that. Maybe we'll do that the morning of the election, right? Well, we don't care who's running for America. We want to know who Moses is, all right? So, Vlad, you get to be Moses the communitarian, and Douglas, you're Moses the libertarian. Libertarian, yes, right. Yeah. Yeah, and I need someone to pick. I want Moses as a Republican and a Democrat and okay? Marcia, you get to be the Republican, okay, good. Okay, where's Brian? He'll get to be Moses as the Democrat, okay, that's good.
Now, one of the greatest thinkers of all time, Rambam.
Yeah,
You're saying it's all accessible and within you.
Yes.
And then you read Rambam and you go, huh?
no, I would argue with you, pardon me. So Maimonides is going to say that every one of us has the capacity to become a prophet. We all do. Prophecy for him isn't some strange esoteric wisdom that falls from the sky. Prophecy is the perfection of the intellect. And every one of us has the capacity to perfect the intellect. The problem is we have many, 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 many other things to do in life, many distractions. And most of us don't have the discipline to sit and to discipline the body and discipline the appetites and create a disciplined environment in which we can perfect the intellect. But frankly, Maimonides would agree with this. He says, what's in you is not the truth. What's in you is the capacity to apprehend the truth. The capacity to apprehend the truth. That every human being has. Prophecy. Sorry, what?
So Rambam's a Buddhist.
Oh. On another morning, we're going to. He's not a Buddhist, but it's a philosophy of enlightenment in that sense. Yeah, in the sense that Buddhism is a philosophy of personal enlightenment, Rambam would agree to that.
I thought he was an Aristotelian.
Oh, no, please. All right, so let's do a little Gemara. This is one of the most famous pieces of the Talmud. It's a short little vignette. It's a short little vignette that occurs in the book of Bava Metzia. So really quickly, the Talmud is the collection of the rabbinic mind, the rabbis who ran the community, from about 100 BCE till around 400 CE, 500 CE. These are the guys who took over the leadership of the community following the destruction of the Holy Temple in 70, and whose civilization prospered in Israel, and then they moved eastward into Babylon, into what is today Iraq, Mesopotamia, and created great centers of Jewish learning there. And then when those centers of Jewish learning began to decay because the political instability was too much, they sat down and wrote down all of their interpretations, discussions, disagreements into a great, great collection of books called Talmud. Okay? To read the Talmud is like sitting at your Seder table with your 20 smartest uncles, because it's all an argument. And they'll put a topic on the table, and it's a record of the argument. What's really interesting is that very rarely in the Talmud do they tell you who wins at the end. It's like the argument is much more important than who wins at the end. And by learning how to learn this stuff, you get to sit in with them. Some of it's about law. And you'll see this begins with a law. Some of it's just stories they tell each other. Some of it's memories of their teachers. Some of it's interpretation of biblical verses. Some of it's prayer and worship and devotion. It's all this, and it's all mushmashed. Now, the Talmud is divided into sections. In Hebrew, they're called masechtas, and in English, tractates. And they're very, very, very loosely topical, because Jews digress all the time. And so the biggest one of all of them is called Nezikin, which means torts. That's Jews suing Jews. Imagine that, right? And as I told you, there's a new kosher sushi restaurant called Sosumi, you know. So it was so big they had to divide it into three. And they call the first one Bava Kama, the first gate, Bava Metzia, the second gate, and the third one's Bava Basra, the third gate, okay? So this is the second volume of Bava Metzia, and every page, they had folio pages, so every page has two sides. Remember vinyl records? Right? My kids don't understand this, you know. They do, but they're like antiques now. And anyway, A and B. So this happens to occur in Bava Metzia chapter, page 59, A and B. Now the broad context of this has to do with the ethics of language. The broad context of what we're about to read starts out with this ruling from the Mishnah. Just as there is wronging in buying and selling, there is wrong done by words. Okay? Just as you can hurt somebody or cheat somebody by taking their money fraudulently, you can also hurt somebody by what you say. In what way? Thus, one must not ask another, what's the price of the article, if he has no intention of buying. Okay? You're at the airport, and your flight, you just discovered your flight is 3 hours delayed, and you have some time to kill, so you walk into a camera shop, and there's a kid there working the camera, and you don't have any intention whatsoever about buying a camera, but you take up an hour of the kid's time. Let me show me this one, show me that one. How does that work? How does it work? That's called, in the Talmud language, that's called genevas dat. You're stealing him. What are you stealing from him? Time. What else? Hope. You're raising his expectations. Think of the mentality of that moment. You think you have a right to go and occupy this person's time because you think you're more important than he is, right? Okay. The more, by the way, the more egregious kind of, or not egregious, the more common version of this is if you think you want to buy something online, but you want to go look at it first at Target or Best Buy. This happens to me all the time because I buy a lot of stuff online, but I want to go see it. I always tell the salesperson, I'm not buying today. I'm not buying today. You want to show it to me, that's fine. That's your business. But I don't want to give you the impression that I'm about to buy it and then walk out of the store. Because I want to at least respect you as an equal. I'm not putting myself up, you see? Now, it's a very subtle ethical thing because it's not legal. It's more ethical than legal in the sense that if I see a guy in a camera store, I don't know what his intentions are. But this is about me. I don't want to walk the world as the kind of person who does this, because I don't want to be the victim of this either. Right? So, number one, you can't say, how much is it if you don't really intend to buy it. Number two, one must not say to a repentant sinner, remember your former deeds. Right?
But isn't it a way of learning? Isn't it a way of educating yourself?
Of what?
Of going to a store and asking
Oh,
questions?
no, that if you're interested and you have some interest in maybe buying the thing, and maybe you will, that's fine. No, that's
Buying today, I
but-
may buy next week.
that's true. That's fine. That's legitimate. No, you're exactly right. No, look, I know lots of people. I live with a person who doesn't intend to buy anything and then comes home with stuff, and she's really wonderful. So, look what I found. I said, oh my God, I'm such a lucky person.
I went into a gun store one day to learn all about guns.
Yeah.
I had no intention of ever buying a gun.
Okay.
I learned everything about
Okay, all right. No, but you see, if you want to learn, as long as you tell the sales clerk, this is what I'm doing, I think that's legitimate. But if you have some intention, okay? But if you're just going there to kill some time, and he's your entertainment, but he doesn't know he's your entertainment, that's what they're talking about.
for education.
Well, if you tell him that, I think it's okay.
The alternate to that is if you're taking up that person's time
Yeah.
and you don't mean to buy anything, and that salesperson, there may be somebody else there waiting to
Well,
buy
that's
something.
another thing
You're
too.
stealing from that
But what you're doing is you're using words. You see, so this is the misuse of language is what they're talking about. If there's somebody who has had a sort of sordid past and has tried to get beyond it by doing tshuva, to come back and to say to them, I remember who you used to be, that's illegitimate, right? One must not taunt the descendant of converts. This is very interesting. You're not allowed to remind somebody that they were once not Jewish or their family wasn't Jewish. Once they're part of us, they're part of us. So you can't use words to destroy people. And then if you read the Gemara here, there's a whole bunch, they take it from you shall not wrong one another, from Leviticus, and there's some wonderful ideas here about how one uses language and doesn't. That's just the sort of general context. Here's the case that comes before the court. So the setting, did we do this before? I think we've done this before, but it's important for you to do. The setting is the court in Yavne, and the year is about 100. So we're in the generation that follows the destruction of the Holy Temple. Rabbi Gamliel, who is the direct descendant of Hillel, and through Hillel, direct descendant of King David. Rabbi Gamliel is the leader of the community. Okay, the two principal rabbis are Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus and Rabbi Yoshua. Right, these two great men dominate the court, and their student is Rabbi Akiba, who you've probably heard of. Right, so that's who we are. And here's the problem, the ostensible problem, and you'll appreciate this. Anyone ever been to the San Fernando Mission? In the San Fernando Mission, they have a communal oven. In ancient and medieval, and before modernity, before Thermidor was given to us by the Lord God, or KitchenAid, you didn't have an oven in your house because it would burn your house up. It was a communal oven. In Spanish, it's a horno, they call it, right? And everybody shared the oven. Right? Well, here was the problem. There are certain animals in Jewish law that render something impure, like it's a lizard, a sheretz. What happens if a sheretz crawls into the communal oven? Then the oven's now impure. So in order to use the oven, you have to now cool the oven, which takes a week, clean the oven, and then relight it, which means for about a week and a half, there's no fresh bread and no warm food. That's a problem. You all agree? Good. So there comes a guy named Aknai, who is an inventor. And what does he invent? The world's first self-cleaning oven. The oven is a ceramic plate covered with a top. He smashed the ceramic plate, put sand in between the fragments. Now, if the sheretz walks into the oven, it gets burned up in the sand because the sand is much hotter than the ceramic plate. Pretty clever, right? So you have a barrier that prevents the sheretz from the lizard from getting into the oven. So he brings this guy Aknai. He's made a kill. He's gonna. This is it. This is his his IPO. I mean, he's going to go to Wall Street and make himself $1 zillion. This is before Apple there was Aknai, right? So he walks it. But he needs to get the rabbi's stamp, the OU. So he goes into the Beis Midrash, he comes into court with the blueprints for this thing, and he lays it out in front of the rabbis. And guess what? Right? Rabbi Eliezer declared it pure. Rabbi Eliezer, maybe he owns stock in the company, I don't know. You know, and he says, this is okay, you can use this. This is pure. He's done it. But all the other rabbis said, no, it doesn't work. I mean, you can figure out why, but it doesn't work. It doesn't matter. The oven is now irrelevant. On that day, Rabbi Eliezer brought forward every imaginable argument, but the other rabbis wouldn't accept them. So the court is both a court and a legislature and a law school. Court, legislator, law school, right? And they're discussing, can we use this oven? And the ruling is going to declare it pure or impure. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus is the Av Beis Din. He's the second in command of the academy. He's a tall, great-looking, good-looking man with a long mane of gray hair. His father was a huge landowner, so he's very wealthy. He wears beautiful cloaks and nice shoes. He has a powerful voice and an incredibly powerful mind. Nothing ever escaped him. And when he rules, in almost every case, he wins, except here. He's not used to losing. He doesn't, so he brings forward every imaginable argument to prove to the other rabbis that this thing is pure, but the rabbis say no. And finally, poor Rabbi Eliezer, who doesn't know how to lose, gets so frustrated, so enraged, that he looks at the rabbis and he says, okay, boys, if the halacha agrees with me, you see the tree in the courtyard? Let the carob tree prove it. The tree is rooted up and jumps in the air 100 cubits. Cubit is from the tip of your elbow, tip of your finger, 18 inches. Other people say 400 cubits. He points to the tree, and the tree rockets in the air 600 feet. What do you call that? A miracle. That's a miracle. My God, it's a miracle. And notice, they don't dispute that it's a miracle. But they say, sorry, no proof can be brought from a tree. He thinks they need a bigger miracle. He thinks they want to see something more spectacular. So he points to the river, and the river's flowing downstream. And he says, if I'm right, let the stream of water prove it. And the water flows uphill. What do you call that? A miracle. And the other rabbis say, no proof can be brought from a stream. All right, stop. What's going on? What's going on? This is very profound. If I produce a miracle, if we're discussing God's law, we're discussing God's law. We're discussing how God wishes us to live in the world. And we're trying to apply that law in all of its principles to the actualities of the lives we're living. So that's a process of interpretation, which is tricky. In all cases, it's tricky, right? So Rabbi Eliezer thinks that his interpretation is justified, and he's brought all these arguments, and the other rabbis say we don't accept them. That's not how God's law ought to be lived. So now he says, well, okay, fine. I'll produce a miracle. What's the miracle supposed to do? What's the purpose of the miracle? Authority. A miracle, what? A miracle proves that God supports his position. In many religions, if I produce a miracle, it shows that God's on my side, right? You can think of many of them, right? If I say, I'm right, watch, and I, walk across the pool, you know that I'm right. Miracles show you that God is on his side. Shouldn't that be the end of the discussion? That should be the end of the discussion. He proves the miracle. What else do you want? Why won't they? Now, they don't dispute that it's a miracle.
But it's magic.
They don't. Well, hang on a minute. They don't. Yes, but not quite that way. They don't dispute that it's a miracle. Why won't they accept the miracle? Think about what happens to the academy. Think about what happens to the process. Think about what happens to us as Jews if they accept the miracle and say, oh, well, in that case, sure, you're right. What happens to us, to the process, what happens? You have the microphone? Brian, in back. Wait, hang on. Hey, if I don't hear you, your voice is worthless. There you go. Go.
At that point, your brain is worthless.
Why?
What's the point of thinking?
Yeah.
If it can be overpowered by some miracle that's unrelated to this.
All right, so
what's the point of debating? What's the point
Exactly.
of that discussion? What's the point of
The
Judaism?
process is a process of reasoning. It's a process of moral reasoning. It's a process of moral deliberation. It's a process of moral judgment making. But if I short circuit that process and say, I'm right and I'll prove it to you, pick a card, any card, that's where it's magic, and I'll show you that God's on my side, it's the end of the discussion. It's the end of the discussion, right? Not only is it the end of the discussion, it means that from now on, anytime we have to make a decision, we don't sit and reason about it. We don't discuss it. We don't debate it. We don't search for precedents. We don't search for ideas. What do? We wait for someone to produce a miracle. And by the way, once he produces the miracle, how do you refute it? How can you disagree with him? The only way to prove him wrong or to refute it is
Produce a greater
a bigger miracle. And now you have a contest of magicians, not a contest of rabbis. It's not a contest of ideas anymore. It's not a discussion of moral reasoning anymore and of moral imagination. What is it? It's a contest of whose magic tricks are more fantastic than the other one. One more step. But once I say I give miracles or magic tricks authority over my morality, he could command anything. Today he says the oven is pure. Tomorrow he says, take your children and kill them on the top of the mountain. And you can't argue with him because he's the guy with the miracles. And you have to obey him. And you can't prove him wrong and you can't argue with him. You can't dissent because he's the guy with the miracles. You see, when we have a process of moral reasoning, of judgment, of deliberation, of conversation, of discussion, I can raise my hand and say, I think you're wrong about that. Let me show you why. But the moment you say, no more discussion, here's the miracle, then anything he says goes. And the whole tradition is about leaving Egypt and escaping the tyranny of Pharaoh. And if you subject yourself to miracles, well, we're back living with Pharaoh again, who thought he was God. Who thought he was God. Right? So this is Rabbi Eliezer thinks he's talking about an oven. And the rabbis realize, no. We're way beyond an oven now, babe. We're talking about the very nature of religion. And the very nature of the religious personality. And the very nature of moral and communal legal decision making. Deciding what's right and what's wrong. Whether that is a process, as you said, using your brain, of moral reasoning and imagination, or whether that's a contest of authority based on tricks. And Rabbi Eliezer still doesn't get it. He's so angry. So now he does one more thing, but first the comment. And then Farzan has a comment.
Isn't there an irony here that if you're going to say the moral or compassionate thing of the position, of the underlying position, really does lie with that Rabbi Eliezer?
Wait.
He's the one who's saying you can use the oven. The
Well-
other guys are saying don't eat.
Wait. In terms of compassion?
Yes, in terms of the underlying moral issue. Isn't he right? And the
No,
other guy,
no, because
If you can't use
he's.
the oven.
I don't know if compassion is the reason he made the ruling. It doesn't tell you that.
But isn't
right?
that, if you look at that issue, which is the compassionate answer?
No, listen, I'm the most lenient rabbi in Encino. If you want something made kosher, you bring it to me. If it says oink, I won't hear it. I mean, you're talking it. But no, see, they could say to Aknai, redesign the oven. I mean, we identify with your desire to save the community the anguish of not having warm food over the holiday. Redesign the oven, and we'll take another look. I mean, you could think of other ways around this. It's not just a matter of compassion. Yes, Farzan, hi.
Hello, Shana Tova, everyone. But there is a point in religion that we have to remove all thought and reason and adhere to what we are told.
Oh, did everybody hear that? Wait. That was brilliant. Is there a part of religion which says remove all thoughts and reason and do what you're told? I want you to stop right there. Don't say another thing. That's a question. That's exactly the question. What is the nature of the religious personality? What is the highest value in religion? Is obedience, faithfulness, submission, the highest value of religion? Or are there other values that are competing values? Does religion demand obedience to its capital A authority, who owns the capital T truth? Or is there another way to understand it? Stop right there, because you're going to hear that. Wait, I promise we'll come back to this. Right? Ready? Rabbi Eliezer gets so angry, he exercises something which in some Jewish families is common. It's called spite. Anyone seen this? Don't say it out loud. I don't want to embarrass you. But there are some Jewish families where this happens a lot. I'd rather be dead than wrong. Right? And so what does he say? I'm not kidding. He says, if the halacha agrees with me, let the walls of the academy prove it. You're dealing with a big building made out of boulders, stacked one on top of the other. So the walls start like quaking and coming in, and they're going to fall on the rabbi and kill them all. If I'm right, we all die finding out. You ready? And now at this point, his partner, every rabbi has a bal plukta, he has a partner. And his partner is Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Eliezer is this tall, magnificent-looking man, very powerful and wealthy. Rabbi Yeshua was the opposite. Rabbi Yeshua was a tiny man who was born with some sort of defect, hunchback, or perhaps it was polio or scoliosis as a child. And he was hunched over. And unlike Rabbi Eliezer, he was poor. Rabbi Yeshua was poor. In those days, rabbis had to have a real job, and he made charcoal. It's sort of like being a chimney sweep in 19th century England. And he walked around covered with schmutz all day long. So this little schmutzig man walks into the academy, and he is the equivalent of this. He is the equal. And that moment, they become complete spiritual equals. Rabbi Yoshua stands up, as it were, because he's this broken little man, and he points to the walls, and he says, yo, walls, rabbis are in an argument? What's it to you? Well, that's not exactly what he said, but he said, when scholars engage in these disputes, what right do you have to interfere? And the walls didn't know what to do. It says the walls didn't fall in honor of Rabbi Yoshua, and they didn't stand up in honor of Rabbi Eliezer, and to this day, they're crooked. Whenever you're in a Jewish building, you will notice that it doesn't work right. The air conditioning never works right. The microphones never work right. The lights. Jewish buildings are always cockeyed. It's not because of bad maintenance or construction. It's because of the two great rabbis of the 2nd century. Now you know. Now you know. What would be the ultimate miracle? The ultimate miracle that would settle this once and for all, hands down, no questions asked. Right? Bring God to testify. Right? Adam Schiff is going to subpoena God. Right? Bring God to testify. Bring him here. Come on. So imagine in the United States Supreme Court, they called James Madison to testify. You know, we want to know what the Constitution says about this. Let's bring the guy who wrote the damn thing. Bring God. And that's what he does. Watch. He says, if the halacha agrees with me, let heaven prove it. This is a story, so you can get away with this. Then a heavenly voice called out, why do you dispute with Rabbi Eliezer? In all matters, the halacha agrees with him. Done. Right? God says he's right. He's always right. Why are you giving him a hard time? Now, that should be the end of the story, right? I mean, if the story ended there, then you'd be right. If the story ended there, then the religious personality would be a personality of submission. You have to obey. God said it. You have to obey. And in this case, he is the embodiment of God's law. You have to obey him. And that would be the end. And Jewish history would be much more boring than it is. Because Jews would do what we rabbis tell them to do. I mean, I've always thought about it. It's our fantasy, right? Right? You stand in front of these, keep kosher, and they all go, okay. And all the steakhouses on Ventura Boulevard go out of business because no Jews show up on Thursday night. I mean, what happened in our business? I don't know. The rabbi said kosher. They stopped coming. I mean, it's terrible. Can you imagine what that would be like? It's a fantasy. But here's what happens. Rabbi Yoshua, that same guy, this little broken man, this little man of broken body, as it were, stands up and he quotes the verse we just read. He says to God, Lo bashamayim hi. It is not in heaven. What's it? The Torah, the truth, the answer, the way. It's not in heaven. Now remember the verse. I gave you the verse here just in case you forgot it, right? Moses says to the people, and this is with Moses' last breaths because he's about to die, what's the bottom line of my whole truth? This commandment that I command you this day is not beyond you. It is not far away. It is not in heaven that you need to say who can go get it for us. It's not across the sea that you need to say who can go find it for us. It is in your heart and in your mind and in your heart to do it. What did Rabbi Joshua mean by that? When Rabbi Joshua says to God, it is not in heaven, what did he mean? What was he saying to God? David, what? He's saying to God, stay out, butt out. I mean, buzz off, you know? Check out. Go. This isn't yours. Why? What do you mean? It is not in heaven means what? What's the it?
It's in your heart. It's you.
Torah. Torah is not in heaven. Where did you put Torah, God? In us. You put Torah here. You put Torah in us. You gave Torah to us. You didn't keep Torah in heaven. If you kept Torah in heaven, every time you'd have a question, you'd simply pray on it. I told you I have a very, very, very religious old friend, and I love him very much. And every time he has a serious question, he prays on it. And he looked at me with such beautiful, he's such a sweet guy. And he says, Ed, when you have a hard decision, do you pray on it? And I said, no, I asked my wife, you know. Because we Jews don't do that. I mean, pray on it. Because lo bashamayim, it's the answer's not there. The answer's not there, but it's even deeper than that. What else does he mean? What did Rabbi Yeshua mean by lo bashamayim? It's not in heaven. Someone else had an answer. Yeah, Brian, yeah.
I was just going to say, it's not up to heaven, it's up to us.
Yes.
Right, to sit down, work together, figure it out, and go on.
Right. You gave us reasoning. You gave us judgment. You gave us moral responsibility. And you gave us the authority as a community of scholars to figure out the way for this community. That's Torah. Torah is what the community decides through its scholars, right? Therefore, God, don't jump in and take away that authority and that responsibility. Because if you do, what do you do to us? You make us into slaves again. I'd use a different metaphor here. You make us children. You make us children. If we have to run to God every time we have a decision to make, you make us children. The difference between being a child and being an adult is an adult makes decisions and doesn't have to go check and make sure the decision was right. You make a decision on the basis of the best information and the best reasoning you can. You ask other people to check your reasoning, and then you make a decision and you stand by your decision. To have to run back to God infantilizes you. So there's this really interesting coda to the story. So if you turn a page on the other side, we'll skip the first paragraph, come back to the second. The second paragraph. Rabbi Natan met Elijah the prophet. That's really funny. Elijah the prophet, according to the book of 2 Kings, never died. Elijah went into heaven in a fiery chariot. And so the tradition is that Elijah is still alive in the world. And he comes to the world every now and then and does nice things. Right? If anyone ever helps you out in a jam, complete stranger, for no other reason, that was Elijah. That was Elijah, right? Okay? That was Elijah. So Rabbi Natan, just generations later, Rabbi Nathan, is a mystic. So every Tuesday he has lunch with Elijah. You know, they meet, Jerry's Deli. And so it's just like what's going on in the universe today. So once Rabbi Natan meets Elijah and he says, listen, I'm dying to know, what did God do at that moment? How did God respond when Rabbi Yeshua said, buzz off, back off, we have to make this decision? I mean, did God get angry? Did he destroy a galaxy or two? Did he have a temper tantrum? What does God do? And the answer is, He laughed with joy and said, Nitzchuni banai. My children have defeated me. My children have defeated me. All right, what's the image here? Why is he proud? What kind of pride is this? This is parental pride. In what? Why is a parent proud when a kid... Because the highest accolade that a kid pays to a parent is when you teach your kid to be an adult and the kid takes responsibility. When the kid reflects back to you the very values you taught them. When the kid acts on their own. The image is a parental image of a child who overcomes the parent, but in an area which the parent has taught the kid. And I know that I fulfilled my obligation as a parent when my kid can make wise decisions without me having to tell him every minute what to do. That's a parent's joy. Nitzchuni banai. Yes, please. Yes, I'm sorry, Douglas. I apologize. Where's the other microphone? Yeah.
I have a comment back to the lizard.
Yeah.
Who makes the
Back
oven.
to the lizard.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Who makes the oven not kosher.
Yeah.
Okay. The rabbis already have ruled that if a piece of meat, which is kosher,
Yeah.
if a drop of milk
Yeah.
falls on it,
Yeah.
because it's like 1/10 of 1%.
1/60th.
Yeah, and the food is expensive.
Yeah.
The meat is kosher. The same rule should apply to the lizard.
See, if you were in you would have saved us the trouble of trees rocketing in the air and rivers flowing backwards and walls falling in. You could have just solved it, and it would have been an easier discussion. Right, you're exactly right. Look, yes, Brian, go ahead, please.
It's not so easy moving around.
It's good for you, though. This is great exercise. You get your steps in.
I'm a little hung up on the word defeated.
Yeah.
That sort of suggests...
Overcame, pushed back, yeah.
But it suggests a certain relationship between parent and child.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a battle.
Yeah. No, it's a loving defeat. Go ahead.
But it is succession.
It is succession. No, he's right. You're right.
In this scenario, it's succession of thought.
No, when I was 17 years old and we went on a trip and my dad handed me the car keys and said, "You drive." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, you're better than me."
So did he
Right?
feel pride?
Yes. Don't you?
Did he feel defeat?
No, the opposite. Pride. That's the point. It's ironic defeat. The word defeat is ironic here. You're right. It's the pride you feel when your kid can do something you taught him to do and he does it better than you. Right? I can't fix my computer, you know. My kid. In fact, my kid's actually getting too old to fix my computer. I'm waiting for grandchildren to fix the damn computer. You know, it's a but I want to get this clear. I'm sorry. You want to add something? Go ahead, please. Go on.
Contradiction is we're being told keep my commandments, not
Yes.
debate my commandments, but keep them. You were talking about obedience.
Yeah.
That's the epitome of obedience, and that's God's commandment. So how do you
Yeah, but so how would you reinterpret keep my commandments? How would you reinterpret that?
I can't, because the consequences
Yeah.
are so dire.
Yeah, but the
We're
point
not
is
told debate my commandments. There are variants in my commandments.
very good.
It seems like
Yeah.
it's ultimately do it or else.
Yeah, it is a do it or else thing. So let's look at this a moment. So that's one of the differences between biblical religion and rabbinic religion. Biblical religion is apodictic. You have a dictator, you have a king telling you what to do, and you'd better do it or else. Rabbinic religion has this element of deliberative democracy. We do have a law code, but we have to decide what it means in our lives. So that's a big difference. You're right. The Bible says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, which means you go around knocking out people's eyes and teeth, right? The Talmud says, well, what if you have a one-eyed guy? You're going to knock, or have a blind guy. What do you do then? Or what do you have a guy and there's no teeth? I mean, the Talmud introduces this deliberative democracy. The temple has been destroyed, and God plays a different role in our lives now than God played for the authors of the Bible. I think you're exactly right. I think it's a very perceptive way of grasping this. Let's just finish it. Ready? So what do you get at the end? This is Feinstein's point, which was really well made. The highest religious virtue is not obedience. The highest religious virtue is not submission. The highest religious virtue is to grasp the necessity of applying your own moral reasoning and moral imagination and to become an embodiment of that process. Hi.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm coming.
Okay, great.
Bless who?
The Howard family.
Are they up now?
Yeah.
I'll be there in a minute. That's the highest religious virtue. But here's the problem. Here's the problem. So moral independence, moral autonomy, moral judgment is a higher religious value in this system than obedience, which is an amazing idea. Moral adulthood is a higher religious value than obedience. The problem is, Rabbi Eliezer was right and the rabbis were wrong. Once you step away from authority, once you step away from obedience to that voice, you run the risk of being wrong. And every adult in the room knows this because we've all made decisions and said, gee, I hope that's right. And you never know, and sometimes you're wrong. So you have to, as an adult, a moral adult has to learn to live with the ambiguity of knowing I might be wrong. If you want certainty, if you want absolute serenity, it's not a Jewish value, by the way. If you want the serenity of having absolute certainty, you have to go find an authority and go do everything he or she says. That's Egypt. That's exactly right. That's the only certainty that's available to us in this world. But the rest of us, the only certainty, you're not going to get certainty. You get maybe 90%, but there's always going to be a 10%. I wonder if we got that wrong. But by doing it together as a collective, we say we're in this together. Moral adulthood means living with that ambiguity, with that uncertainty, with that ambivalence, but gaining the dignity of knowing that I made the decision myself. I made the decision myself. Lo bashamayim hi. Those are the three words. It's not in heaven. It's ours to make decisions about how we will conduct our world, live our lives, and seek God together. Shana Tova. Happy, healthy New Year. I got to go bless a family. Oh, my God.